Okay, perhaps we can get started. I just want to introduce our guest in celebration of Black History Month, and on behalf of the Italian program, I would like to welcome our guest today, Fred Kuwornu, filmmaker, activist, and educator. I'd like to welcome him to SCSU, if only virtually. Hopefully, we will be able to meet up again sometime soon in person. And I would also like to thank the Department of World Languages and Literatures for making this event possible. Some of you know and follow Fred on social media from the screenings of his films Inside Buffalo and 18 Soli that were screened here at SCSU 3 years ago. Fred Kuwornu grew up in Italy to an Italian Jewish mother and a father who is a Ghanaian surgeon living in Italy since the early 1960s. Fred holds a bachelor's degree in political science and mass media from the University of Bologna. At the age of 16, he began working as a DJ and producer and went on to work in TV writing with the Rai Public Television Broadcasting. After his experience working on the production of Spike Lee's Miracle at St. Anna, that I know a number of you have seen, Fred decided to research the story of the 92nd Infantry, the Buffalo Soldiers Division, an all African American combat unit who fought to liberate central Italy from Nazi and fascist occupation during World War II. On the topic, he produced and directed Inside Buffalo, which won the category of Best Documentary at the Black Berlin International Cinema Festival. Inside Buffalo had screenings at the Pentagon, the Library of Congress, and received a special letter of congratulations from former President Barack Obama. In 2012, he released 18 Soli, which examines multiculturalism in Italy and the question of citizenship for the 1 million children of immigrants born and raised in Italy who, unlike in the US, are not automatically granted citizenship. In 2016, he released the film Blaxploitation: 100 Years of Black in Italian Cinema. It's a critical documentary tracing the contributions of actors of African descent in Italian film. Today, he will discuss his latest production, a web.concept series called Blaq Italiano, exploring culture, race, identity, and citizenship in contemporary Italy. And this focuses on issues like activism among Black Italians living in Italy and abroad, and the Black Lives Matter movement in Italy today. We will allow for questions at the end, so please feel free to drop them in the chat box and I can read them at the end. Or if time permits, and I think it almost certainly will, if you would like to raise your hand using the emoji feature and unmute yourself, and we can take some live questions as well. So please join me in welcoming Fred Kuwornu. Thank you so much, Fred.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are fine, and thank you for having me for this conversation tonight and for the Black History Month. I'm saying tonight because I'm connected from Rome, but I knew that everyone is connecting from a different part of US to this afternoon, so welcome. And yeah, I think that last time that I was the college was maybe 3 years ago, and hopefully when the COVID emergency will end, we will restore physical events. I will come back, and I've seen a lot of also friends that I know, also on Facebook or social media. So there are a lot of great welcome today. The talk of today, it's a sort of explanation about a project that I'm following and a project that I'm developing, not as a feature documentary, but as a communication. Actually, I always I believe that my priority in my career is to create a form of communication, and filmmaking or producing documentary I consider as a communication form, and not just a filmmaker or artist or something that are connected to the idea of win a film festival or going into the important film libraries, but much more to create civic engagement, and in particular through a lot of community screening that I made over the last 10 years. Since a decade, by the way, I'm very interested in another topic that also includes a part of my biography, that is the storytelling of Blackness in Italy. And in particular, I believe strongly, and this is also my motto, that it's very important to tell your own story before the other tell it for you. And so for this reason, working or analyzing to bring to the attention and describes much more better the composition of African Italians in Italy is also a way to reflect on my bio and also my background. So for this reason, it's a way to tell my own story if it's not so meticulously told. So the introduction of today, it's connected with a lot of clips that I produce and in part edited. So some of the clips are produced by me also for the shooting, the other are edited for work of post-production from different things that you can find actually in a place in which we are everyone familiar. I'm talking about the social media. And so the talk of today will be really enriched by the presence of the social media. That's why we talk the digital culture, so Black Italians in the digital culture in contemporary Italy, because digital culture, so everything that is brought to the attention through the social media, it's becoming a sort of game changer in the culture of Italy, in particular in the culture of the millennials generation or Generation Z. So I would like just to share a couple of video introducing also something much more about me. Even the introduction of Erin was beautiful, but one of the reasons why I'm investigating, of course, around the social group of the Afro-Italians in Italy is also connected to my personal bio, the fact that I'm African descent. My father came in 1965 to study medicine in Italy, and I raised in an environment that was really homogeneous in terms of religion, language, ethnicity. I'm talking about, of course, the outside environment, not the environment of my family. And I didn't suffer a lot about that, but I understood later on how it's important raising in a diverse place, in a diverse context, and the beauty to celebrate other lives' experience, how could support your life and your career, your empowerment. So of course, I always still missing something since my childhood in the elementary school, middle school, in the first steps of my career. The fact that I was not able to reflect myself in the group that was surrounding me as a workforce or classmate was really important. And I discovered I was important later on also in create self-confidence. What I'm seeing as right now, simply scholars that is very attracted by the new generation is something that I'm really jealous about it, because it's something that I still miss when I was childhood. So today we will share, for example, some experience. In particular, I would like to start with some definition about what we are talking, and in particular, the story of a generation that we can start to refer this generation to a soccer player. His name is Mario Balotelli. He was a striker, also joined the national Italian team for a couple of years, and he played abroad Italy, in UK, and I think also France too. And there is this term, Generation Balotelli. It's a sociologist term because it's referred to the generation of Italians who were born primarily in the early 90s, like Mario Balotelli. It's referred to the generation, in particular, sons of immigrants. So in every case, a generation of different ethnicity, not only African descent. But this generation is the generation who is doing a lot of things that we are gonna show tonight on the digital culture. So we'll start with this clip about Mario Balotelli and also about a young Italian artist and creative, and I will explain later on his bio.
Maybe sometimes it's frustration. Frustration meaning there's no work, there's no job. So whenever I see you coming, of course you coming in my country to work, or you coming, the little food that I have, you coming for it. So definitely I'm gonna hate it. That is part of racism, and that's part of it.
I felt a little bit alone when I was home, and I always said that if it happened in the stadium, I just do like if nobody say nothing and I don't care. But this time, I think I changed my mind a little bit, and if it's gonna happen one more time, I'm gonna leave the pitch.
Il fenomeno Balotelli è mio nipote che accende la televisione, vede Balotelli e tifa Italia perché c'è Balotelli. Quello è il fenomeno Balotelli. È mio nipote che si fa ancora la cresta perché si ricorda di Balotelli. Io quando ero piccolino accendevo la televisione e non avevo nessun tipo di riferimento. Ricordo che nella finale del 99-2000 Italia-Francia io tifavo Francia perché mi rappresentavano molto di più. Mi sentivo più rappresentato, ricordo che ero lì che tifavo Francia, ero l'unico che stava esultando, uguale nel 2006. Quando è arrivato Balotelli, mio padre, che non aveva mai visto una partita d'Italia, si è guardato tutto il mondo, tutto l'europeo. Perché se Sturridge, attaccante dell'Inghilterra, sbaglia gol, gli si dice sei un coglione. Se Balotelli, nazionale italiana, sbaglia gol, gli si dice non sei italiano.
And I started with this clip for many reasons. One, because of course it's a still well-known football player around the world. It's very followed by a lot of people also abroad Italy, but it's at the center of a lot of controversy every time that a national symbol, a physical national symbol, so a woman or a man, is a black person. So not when we are talking about people who are in the commonplace of the society, or immigrants or refugees, but when we talk about an important soccer player or someone who is winning the Music Italian Popular Festival of Sanremo or the election of Miss Italy, every time that there is some symbolic, huge advancement in the diverse composition ethnically of Italy, always there are controversies that are connected about race and the fact that they are not Italian. And the comment of Antonio, that is right, is very important. This is a generation that, as Antonio said, when he was really kid, he was supporting in 2000 the France team because it was multi-ethnic. Of course, from 2010 and 2012, many things changed in Italy because the generation born in 90, 92, 93, 94 became 18, 19, 20. It became in sports or some part of the entertainment really powerful. And so it became at 100% a role model also for other kids that look like them. So for this reason, the statement of Antonio is very important at the beginning. And also changing many things about the common idea and sense of belonging and identity of people who are African descent, because from an Italian perspective of the vocabulary, I remember that was really popular in the 70s, called people African descent as Italo-Africano. Now, especially the fact that this generation is they are creating their own definition. They are basically working around two terms. One is Afro-Italian, that it looks like more African-American, so it looks like more the US expression, and the Blaq Italian that try to create also an inclusion of those who are technically not only descendants from African immigrants, but from the African diaspora, so people who are Italian, but maybe they have parents that are from Brazil or country like the Caribbean, in particular Dominican Republic and Cuba. And the composition of Blaq Italian is very wide if we're talking about country of origin. So maybe many of you knows about the colonial past of Italy, but don't assume that the majority of Blaq Italian are Eritrean, Ethiopian, or Somalian. Actually, they are just the 15%. The most important and wide and large community are the people from West Africa, in particular Nigerian Italian, Ghanaian Italian, and I'm proud because my dad is from Ghana, and also people from Senegal. And then we have also people from Congo, so Central Africa. There are also a phenomenon underestimated that was very common in the 70s, 80s. I'm talking about the thousands of kids that were adopted by countries like Egypt, Brazil, and Caribbean, and sometimes Africa, and they raise with a white parent family. So this is another things to investigate much more before saying that the composition is homogeneous. I think it's never homogeneous anymore in the United States, but by the way, of course, the presence of the core of African American inside the Black community is very strong, and in British United Kingdom is much more strong. The presence of people who came from colonial empire, colonial empire of United Kingdom and France. So it's totally different. An important role that has been played to change in this moment the culture and also the creativity of many African descent is the role played by the women, in particular by a generation of bloggers. This is a slide about Aida Ichabodian. She's a blogger, but also an entrepreneur too. She was actually one of the first to launch an important blog, and I put the name of 4 of this blog. But she was not alone. It's a real huge presence. Actually, they are really interconnected, and there are a lot of intersection between the project that they are developing. So it's a huge community. I want to share basically 2 stories. So there are 2 stories of blog created on internet, and they started sometimes as a Facebook page, and then they split and shift into a website, or vice versa. Sometimes they began with a website and then they shift into the other traditional social media like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. This is the story of an entrepreneur and a blogger who had the problem to find a product to take care about her curly hair. So from this idea, basically, he started an entrepreneurship, and she became really successful. So I want to share with you her bio video clip.
E quindi avevo da una parte il mio lato africano, che ho sempre cercato di nascondere e reprimere, il mio lato italiano, che ho sempre accettato, di cui sono sempre andata fiera. Nel momento in cui mi sono dovuta, diciamo, allontanare dal piccolo paesino brianzolo dove sono cresciuta, lì ho iniziato a notare che non ero uguale a tutti gli altri. Milano ogni giorno mi ricordava che tu, Evelyn, non sei italiana, tu, Evelyn, sei nera. Chi era quella persona che gli altri vedevano, chi era quella ragazza che tutti incontravano sulla metropolitana, che incontravano in ufficio, che incontravano in università, ma che io stessa non riuscivo a vedere, perché non volevo vederla, perché era più facile vedere la parte italiana che era accettata, che vedere la parte africana che la società non vuole vedere e che io stessa non volevo vedere. Chi era Evelyn? Era semplicemente una ragazza afro-italiana, interiormente, ma esteriormente? Ho detto, ma i miei capelli devono continuare a nascondersi, ad essere stirati, o forse i miei capelli non li ho neanche mai visti.
Capì che non sarebbe mai esistita una Evelyn italiana al 100%, ma neanche una Evelyn ghanese al 100%. Evelyn era un mix di culture, un mix di due paesi, un mix tra Italia e Ghana. Accettai finalmente questa duplice identità, la bellezza di queste sfumature. Quindi ho deciso di smettere con le stirature chimiche e ho deciso di far crescere i miei capelli naturalmente e ho scoperto dei riccissimi, afro, dei capelli bellissimi. Insomma, la prima cosa che ho fatto è stata andare su internet e cercare informazioni su come gestire questi capelli, questi nuovi capelli, perché per me erano qualcosa di veramente nuovo. E ahimè, tutte le informazioni che trovai erano in tutte le lingue tranne che in italiano, in francese, in inglese, in americano, ma in italiano non c'era nulla. Nella lingua in cui io parlavo quotidianamente, tutti i giorni, non c'era assolutamente nulla. E mi chiesi, sono forse l'eccezione? Sono l'unica ragazza che in tutta Italia ha deciso di sfoggiare i propri capelli? Insomma, decisi di fare qualcosa. Napi perché è un termine afroamericano che descrive due parole, naturally and happy, che in italiano vuol dire felicemente al naturale, perché io con orgoglio sfoggio questi capelli. E girls perché all'inizio non pensavo che questo mondo potesse coinvolgere anche i ragazzi, ad oggi vi dico che è così. Insomma, questa pagina ha iniziato ad aumentare in maniera molto velocemente, smentendo il mio pensiero iniziale di essere un'eccezione. Ma Nap Italia non parla solamente di capelli, parla anche della storia dei capelli afro, perché si è partiti dai capelli naturali, si è passati allo stiraggio e adesso c'è questo movimento che sta tornando indietro al naturale. Ero una studentessa, una receptionist e mai avrei pensato di diventare una blogger, di diventare un'imprenditrice ad oggi, diventare una motivatrice, di avere persone che mi seguono e mi vedono magari come un esempio, accettarsi per quello che si è, per come si è, di non inseguire stereotipi, di non inseguire figure che magari i media ci mandano, ma di essere noi stessi, nella nostra interezza, nella nostra pienezza.
And of course, the statement that is beautiful for me, don't follow stereotypes created by the media or by influence or whatever, was something that was totally difficult by the way, for this generation, because they don't have role model to follow in the media that look like them. So by the way, they need really to generate new role models. So in one sense, it's also, it's an easy life for some aspects between the life of course, a generation of millennials who are trying, by the way, to pursue dreams, goals, and sometimes to follow wrong role model. The other blog that is very interesting, it's much more creating a situation of community belonging, is the blog created by these two girls, Bella mio cosa e Grazia Succubo. The blog is called AfroItalianSouls.it. And they started 7 years ago to write and to post a lot of beautiful clip articles, stories, data. And I interviewed them inside my project called the Blaq that is a project in which we are developing a platform that you can visit at blaqitalia.info. And then there are two different separate single project. One is called Blaq and is a sort of web doc series, short doc about stories that could be interest not only the young generation, but also the generation of African Italian like my dad. And this episode was for me very interesting to see.
Tipo anche questa frase, immigrato di seconda generazione. Ma che vuol dire?
Credo che tu mi seguissi, che tu fossi iscritta al mio canale, una volta hai commentato un video e poi da lì
parlando poi ho capito che
ero polentona.
Sì, polentona, cavolo.
Da lì abbiamo iniziato a commentare nei reciproci video, poi credo che ci siamo scambiati il numero di DNA, tipo...
Sì, ci siamo scambiati il numero, proprio un'amicizia via web.
So this is how I usually like to wear my hair, in a side ponytail.
Ci siamo entrambe rese conto di avere questa frustrazione in comune di essere italiane ma di non essere considerate italiane, sì, e di non vederci rappresentati in nessun modo, e quindi abbiamo deciso insieme di colmare questo vuoto. L'africano non è quello che è mostrato nei TG o comunque nelle varie trasmissioni. Le nostre telefonate di tipo 2 ore. Una volta ho detto, cavoli, ma perché non fondiamo una piattaforma, un blog, sì, dove finalmente possiamo iniziare a costruire la realtà che abbiamo sempre voluto vedere crescendo.
La cosa bella di Africa Dance, secondo me, è che non parliamo soltanto
delle discriminazioni, non cadiamo nel vittimismo.
Ma mostriamo anche per dire che outfit potresti avere, che make-up potresti indossare, i capelli via con natural hair, ma non solo.
Delle coppie miste che mi lascia il fondotinta.
Video sulle coppie miste è piaciuto tantissimo, quindi questi sono i video che sono piaciuti di più sulle coppie miste, perché comunque solitamente si vedono coppie miste in Italia molto adulte, quindi persone che sono sposate, che hanno già figli, sì, e dove la parte di origine straniera è effettivamente immigrata. Invece noi abbiamo mostrato coppie miste italiane e giovanissimi, quindi dai 19 ai 25 anni, non sposati, senza figli, ragazzi che sono nati e cresciuti qua e hanno origine straniera, e quindi abbiamo mostrato come in realtà non ci siano problemi, differenze, barriere tra persone di seconda generazione e gli italiani. Sì. La nostra pagina Facebook ha utenti che vivono anche al di fuori dell'Italia, sì, perché vediamo che c'è gente che ci commenta in portoghese, che viene dal Brasile.
Quando ero piccola detestavo i miei capelli, era come se fossi etichettata come la diversa, come la nera, come quella con i capelli afro.
Ho frequentato l'università, scienze politiche, scienze internazionali e istituzioni europee, percorso diciamo classico. Nasci, cresci, vai a scuola, fai l'università, trovi lavoro e...
Ho fatto all'Università Biotecnologie, triennale a Bologna e specialistica a Roma. Dopodiché mi sono trasferita qui a Milano e ho conseguito un dottorato in patologia.
Che conviene ai media italiani mantenere un'ideologia negativa delle persone, secondo me, di origine africana.
Non si parla mai di noi o appunto delle seconde generazioni. Quando si cerca di parlare, portare insomma alla luce anche le cose positive in qualche modo, è sempre riguarda sempre appunto l'immigrato appena arrivato, o il clandestino, il profugo,
o che ha fatto un'azione positiva nei confronti di un italiano.
Sì, non lo so,
quindi
è salvato la vecchietta dal ladro.
La realtà è già cambiata però sono le istituzioni, sono i media, è al vertice che
non viene
non
mostrata.
non c'è questa voglia di mostrare la nuova faccia dell'Italia.
And this is another great, really great story that we are sharing every time during this conversation, because of course the role of Black women is very important, and they are doing a great work of creating a sense of community, sometimes much more than the young adult male, that sometimes, especially in some kind of segment of the market, in particular the music, sometimes are more selfish, so they are not creating a sense of belonging, of community, but they are creating, by the way, an idea of role models. And we are talking about, in this case, right now, something that is very interesting, that is connected to the publishing world, and in particular the story of this young talent, and now I'm trying to open the clip. His name is Antonio Di Stefano. Yeah, I met and I heard about him in 2014 when on Facebook he was publishing a lot of posts based by his first self-published novel called Fuori piove dentro pure posso prenderti. And it was very interesting the digital marketing strategy that he used to affirm as a writer, but also to let know much more, many things about the lives of the young adult and teenager African descent in Italy. And so day by day, week by week, he started to have much more followers, and also he reached the list, the top of the self-published book on the Amazon list. So it was a great success for, I think at the time he was 19 or 20 years old. So a great success for a person that was very young like him. And the strategy that he adopted to create awareness about his publication was to create a sequence of short video trailer per of course, they are like the book trailer, so they try to advertise the book. But this book trailer was really important because they were also connected with topic and issues of his generation.
Le prime voci che ho sentito quando sono nato erano italiane. Il primo vocabolo era in italiano. Ho imparato a scrivere in stampato e poi in corsivo in italiano, a leggere in italiano, ad amare la vita in italiano, ad odiarla nella stessa lingua. In classe quando ero piccolo mi chiedevano: ma ti senti italiano? E io rispondevo: cosa vuol dire? Perché quella domanda non la facevano a qualsiasi altro mio compagno di classe? Perché proprio a me? Io non mi sentivo né italiano e né un negro come molti mi denominavano. Io mi sentivo incompreso, una divisione. Volevo solo essere chiamato Antonio e che mi chiedessero: ti va di giocare? Da bambino nei disegni mi ritraevo rosa, come tutti i bambini, non perché rifiutassi le mie diversità, ma all'epoca mi sembrava normale. Tornavo a casa e piangevo in italiano. Una volta una compagna di classe che mi piaceva davvero tanto mi disse: se tu fossi bianco saresti più bello. Per me fu un colpo basso che accusai parecchio. La sera davanti alla televisione, dopo mangiato, prima che mio padre mi mandasse a dormire, lo dissi a mamma e lei sorrise. Disse: guardami e dimmi, la mamma com'è, bella o brutta? Risposi senza pensarci due volte: la mamma è bellissima. Replicò: ecco, tu mi somigli tantissimo. In quel preciso momento capii che non volevo né essere italiano e né essere più bello. Io volevo semplicemente essere come mia madre, che non era una donna, ma un miracolo. Fuori piove, dentro pure, posso prenderti.
When I saw this video book trailer, I was really touched. So I tried to enter in contact with Antonio, sending some text and direct message on Facebook. Then we met, and then I really want to support his work in different ways, also because I thought at the time that this was a great novel also to produce a film or something like that about the generation, because basically this first novel, it's a love story between a young Afro-Italian and a white young girl in Italy, and it's a great and light book. It intercepts also the themes of a generation. And the second video book trailer was amazing, and also this book trailer was really followed and commented on social media, because Antonio was able to not only advertise his book, but also to promote in this in particular video was a sort of pre-BLM situation, but he tried to promote the issues of the citizenship in Italy for those who are born by immigrants.
Fuori piove, dentro pure. Passo a prenderti. Mi chiamano immigrato, ma io da dove sono immigrato se sono nato qui? Io mi sento uno straniero quando sono sul treno e nessuno si siede accanto a me. Quando al bar il classico cliente abituale anziano, nostalgico di Mussolini, commenta dicendo dovrebbero mandarli tutti via. Quando mi dicono ah, ma allora sei italiano? E subito dopo mi chiedono se per le vacanze tornerò a visitare il mio paese. Quando mi stringono la mano e si puliscono nei jeans. Quando lei mi dà la mano e la guardano come per dire perché sta con quello. Quando chiamo un'agenzia immobiliare va tutto bene finché mi chiamo Antonio. Poi all'appuntamento sanno solo dirmi mi dispiace, non affittiamo casa agli stranieri. Che suona un po' come mi dispiace, ma non affittiamo casa agli alieni. Io non sono un ragazzo di colore. Io non sono un carico di panni sporchi da lavare. E a dirla tutta, io non divento rosso quando prendo uno schiaffo. Fuori da casa mia c'è il mondo. E milioni di persone soffrono a causa delle diversità. Persone che smettono di mangiare perché per la società hanno qualche chilo di troppo. Perché le pubblicità ci dicono che dobbiamo dimagrire e non smettere di mangiare schifezze se vogliamo vivere di più. A casa mi dicevano sempre, quando punti un dito, te ne tornano indietro 4. Sappi che dipendere dagli altri dipende dal fatto che si ha timore di rimanere soli e che una stella, se vuole, brilla anche dietro le nuvole. Io un po' sono cresciuto, perché se oggi qualcuno mi dovesse dire, lo parli bene l'italiano? Risponderei, anche lei. E se mi chiedessero di tornare al mio paese, risponderei, ci sono già.
This was another great book trailer video, and also the story of this book jumped into a success because after some weeks, Mondadori, that is the main publisher in Italy for books, decided to publish definitely the first self-published book by Antonio. Became so a book published by Mondadori with some new editing, but basically it was the same novel. And from this book, in the following years, he was able to release other 3 novels. And so this was a huge success for a young guy of the province of Italy, because basically he raised also in Ravenna, that is in the Emilia-Romagna region. And the work of Antonio was important, it was an inspiration for other kind of success of people of his generation in Italy, especially 2016 was and 2017 was a huge years because Antonio met in Milan this young artist with a similar background. Gali is Italian-Tunisian, but he was born and raised in Milan. And Antonio decided to manage the career of Gali and to see if there was a possible to create the same digital marketing strategy that he adopted for the book. It was possible to do with the music, in particular using as a social media YouTube more than Facebook, because this was the time that for independent artists in the music, YouTube get more chance to be heard, the lyrics and the music and the production for those artists. Of course, it was necessary to create a video clip. And the union of the two guys was powerful, and also they were joined by other Afro-Italians artists and talents in the crew. So it was a multi-ethnic crew that launched the first album, independent album of Gali, that was released in self-published, like the book of Antonio, but managing a music album is much more complex. This was the day of the release.
Bella, sono uscito dalla melma, da una stalla a una stella, compro una villa alla mamma e poi penserò all'Africa, figlio di una bidella, con papà in una cella, non è per soldi giuro wallah. Io sono fuori Brexit, fotto come un backflip. Non sono un politico, io non cerco consensi. Fuck ciò che pensi, terzo occhio dancing. In giro come gypsy, turista in mezzo ai prezzi. Il fine giustifica i mezzi. C'ho stile anche sui mezzi. Ragazzi a pezzi, tutti a pezzi. Torniamo a casa in carro attrezzi. Nina 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 oh, 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 questo flow a chi lo do, oh, oh, con i sogni dentro al biberon, yeah. Rolling, 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 rolling stone. Nina 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 oh.
Ma l'idea nasce da una collaborazione di me e Gali. Gali, quando non era ancora conosciuto, io lo conobbi e gli dissi: guarda, io solo ti posso dare una mano, ti posso dare dei consigli a livello di marketing, perché un po' l'ho studiato, e vediamo cosa ne esce fuori. Ne è uscito fuori un lavoro da milioni di visualizzazioni, un'azienda che adesso ha 4 dipendenti.
So basically this was a huge success, and they were able to reach a lot of audience, and an important pre-played and phone carrier company, Vodafone Italy, asked to Gali and Antonio to make a commercial, and because they were really popular at the time. So they decided to do a commercial in a different way, to use many visual aspects of the diverse multi-ethnicity of Italy, especially inside the young generation, and using also a particular lyrics. This lyrics has been created just for the purpose of this commercial, but after the success of the commercial and the release of the second album of Gali, became also a song.
Shakera, il tuo telefono forse non prende nell'internet. Finiti a fare freestyle su una zattera in Darsena. Oh, oh, quando mi dicono vai a casa. Shakera. Oh, oh, rispondo sono già qua. Oh, oh, io ti vivi cara Italia. Shakera. Oh, oh, sei la mia dolce metà. Oh, oh, quando il dovere mi chiama. Oh, oh, rispondo e dico son qua. Ci ascolta tua mamma. Oh, 1, 2, 3 sono già là. Oh, quando mi dicono vai a casa. Oh, rispondo sono già qua. Oh, io ti vivi cara Italia. Oh, sei la mia dolce metà.
And also the trajectory of the career of Gali was the same of the trajectory of the career of Antonio. So basically they started from being independent, but being really proactive on social media, working really hard and strong, with a lot of connection. It doesn't matter if you are independent and you are simply creating videos for YouTube, but they really work with international artists. They shoot a video in South Africa, they shoot another video in the Middle East. So they basically act like the mainstream, but of course they were not promoted and sponsored by the mainstream. But this was a huge model and successful model that was able also to create for, in particular, Antonio, but also Gali, a sort of well-respected inside the music industry. Actually, Antonio is still managing other, in particular, rapper artists of the Italian scene. Gali is always one of the most important, not only musician, but his presence is very well supported also by many fashion industry brands and whatever. And at the same time, the trajectory in particular of Antonio, after exploring the publishing world, the music world, is to explore definitely the audiovisual world, in particular the fact that Netflix Italy last year, a year and a half actually, released a press saying that they were working on a project of a series. And actually the series has been completed and it will be released next April, and this is the trailer that has been produced 6 months ago about this year that it will be aired by Netflix worldwide.
Mi chiamo Antonio Di Stefano, ho 27 anni e sono uno scrittore. I miei genitori vengono dall'Angola, ma io sono nato vicino a Varese. 4 anni fa ho iniziato a scrivere e raccontare il mondo che mi circondava e non sono più riuscito a smettere. Sto scrivendo una serie per Netflix. Prende spunto dai personaggi e dall'ambientazione del mio ultimo libro Non ho mai avuto la mia età, ma il progetto seriale ha preso un'altra strada rispetto a quella del romanzo. Zero è la storia di un ragazzo speciale, di un ragazzo nero, che ha un superpotere, grazie al quale può conoscere la realtà delle cose, delle relazioni e delle persone, che si nasconde sempre dietro le apparenze. Per me, per un ragazzo nero italiano come Zero, che deve tutto all'Italia. La cosa più bella è che questa sarà la prima serie nella quale i protagonisti saranno dei ragazzi neri italiani. Spero che questo possa aprire una porta a quegli attori, creativi e artisti neri che non hanno ancora avuto un'occasione importante. Spero che questa storia rifletta quella di tanti ragazzi, a prescindere dal loro colore. Ci sarà tanto rap, perché il rap è la lingua della mia generazione. Zero uscirà nel 2020. Spero che vi piaccia.
And example are in many other fields, not only, of course, in music, audiovisual, entertainment, and sports, but also inside the fashion industry. In particular, in these days, the city of Milan hosted, like every year, the Milan Fashion Week. And inside this week, there was also a digital event hosted by and presented by an Italian fashion designer activist, Stella Jean, who is really involved in this moment in creating networking inside the Italian fashion industry and the representation of Black designer. Of course, Stella is not the only one. There are also other important fashion designer. And also there are the presence in Italy of young African-American designer or artistic director, like, for example, Virgil Abloh, that launched the brand Off-White that is based in Milan. And Virgil Abloh is also the artistic director for Louis Vuitton, and also Jordan Anderson, that is important editor publisher for Vogue Italia, and also the director and the designer for Sansovino. So there is also an important activism scene inside the young generation of the fashion industry. And of course, very often this kind of situation are also intersectional and they are interconnected within together. But of course, many of the topics that are analyzed by this generation, basically we can converge in one that is definitely one of the most important, is the topic of the citizenship. I made a documentary about that in 2012 called 18 Years Soli. It's a documentary in which I explain how it works, the citizenship law in Italy for sons of immigrants. And maybe I can do a reminder to you about how it works. Basically, in Italy, you are an Italian citizen if one of your parents is just Italian. That means that for many sons of immigrants, in which both parents are immigrants and not Italian citizens, they are not automatically Italian citizen when they are born, but they have to wait 18 years old to make an application. So when they turn into 18 years old, they can do the application, and not very often they can have success in acquiring the citizenship. So for this reason, basically, we have around 1 million of persons who are born or raised in Italy since they were kids, but they are not Italian. So this is one of the topics that we found it, and I personally found in a lot of artistic or creative storytelling that came by Afro-Italians. And the other topic, of course, is the sense of identity. Not that they have a problem of identities, but is the fact that they didn't reflect themselves, maybe like me, so we are talking about 40 years old, represented in the Italian society or in many things of the Italian society, like the mainstream media, the advertisement, the news magazine, like the blogger of Afro-Italian Souls said, we always seen imaging of black body that is connected to the refugees that are coming or escaping, of course, by tragedies of war, and they are coming by boat, but I never seen a representation of people like me or like my dad who emigrated with an airplane just because he got a job and they decided to stay here. And this is this kind of representation is totally excluded by the mainstream circle media. So these are the two, I think, most important and relevant topic when we want to open a conversation about a word that it's huge, that is the word racism. And so when we talk about racism in Italy, I think that the 70% is connecting, by the way, to explain in one word multiple concepts like that. It's not to explain the concept only about something that is structural as in United States. Here, I think the most important structural things is, of course, the citizenship, and then there are prejudice and bias, but this is another part of the conversation. So with I'm very excited to wait April. So with the clip in which Antonio promote the new release of Zero, I end the talk and we can open the Q&A.
If anyone has any questions, they can put them in the chat box.
Yeah, sure.
You can also use the emoji to raise your hand, unmute yourself. I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested. I'm really kind of fascinated by what you call the evolution of ways in which Blaq Italians identify. They self-identify. The move from Afro-Italiano to Blaq Italian. And then there's always this paradox that so many Italians or so many Italian instructors talk about, which is the use of English in Italian and in Italian conversations. So there's this paradox, this idea of, seeing representations in the media in other cultures and not in the Italian culture, yet contributing to the dialogue with Blaq Italian souls. And, so much of the discourse is in English still. So even kind of the self-identifier Blaq Italian, when the Blaq experience is so different in the United States versus in Europe, versus specifically in Italy. So I'm trying to, I know that this isn't really a question. I guess maybe could you talk about a little bit of the Black Lives Matter movement in Italy, perhaps how it's different? What is the Italianness of it? And what do you make of this identifier, Blaq Italian, as a way of belonging in Italy, but the term is in English?
Yeah. Now the term is in English, like a translation sometimes, or it's in English because no one use, not no one. Some people use, but not as a sense of community, Italiano nero or nero italiano. So it's because I think that living in a different time and the fact that many people raise also. Not only watching, but interacting with, especially United States from Italy, more than interacting with friends or British, because the British, for example, very often define the African descent as Black British, and sometimes the French as a noir. So I think that the Italians are watching much more what's happening in the world of the United States, of United Kingdom, and not Brazil or Spain or other places. So for this reason, I think there is a dichotomy from the two terms. Of course, still now, many people use Afro-Italiano, but also Afro-Italiano, it's a sort of way to imitate, again, even is in Italian language, the concept created by United States, because the concept of United States, and we can discuss if it's good or not, but by the way, the experience of African descent in America that were Africans was an experience start with slavery. And through the slavery, basically, they forgotten the real place, the real tribe from they come from in Africa. So you can use Afro-American and African-American because you use the word of the continent. Actually, for the people born in Italy, we are talking to people who, like me also, or other people, know exactly the place and the village, and they visit also frequently maybe the country of origin. And so, of course, maybe it's much more interesting the definition of Nigerian Italian or Ghanaian Italian, and some, in the case of Nigerian, I know people who don't like to be defined Nigeria Italian, because Nigeria is huge and there are different land and tribes, and there are Igbo, there are Yoruba, and so basically there are people who say, no, I'm Yoruba Italian, not a Nigerian Italian, or because of course also the political composition of the countries of Africa is being designed by the colonial empires of the past. And sometimes in the same political country, they have to live 3-4 different huge ethnicity that maybe in the past of Africa, they were enemies. They were not the same part of the same kingdom. So, and they are different from many things. So of course, the evolution of different terms, I think, is much more connected sometimes with personal story, sometimes with a sense of belonging. So if I feel lost inside my Italian society, and I see a lot of people that look like me, that they define with a term who they are, I try to use this term until I will discover that I'm something else and not I'm someone who necessarily need to stay in a box.
That's really interesting, because that also kind of mirrors the Italian campanilismo, this idea that, like,
Yeah.
I'm not Italian, I'm not
sure.
Tuscan, I'm Florentine, or I'm from this area, or this, that's a bit Italian as well.
Yeah.
I see somebody I saw a thumb up. Somebody.
Carlos, ciao Carlos. Hi Carlos. Do you believe that people in Italy are reluctant to embrace African Italians in media? Yeah, sure. Sure, because I was working for 4 years as a television producer in a small TV show of Rai, and basically I always struggle to create show with more diverse presence. And I always seen, especially in the last years, I'm talking about statistically, then of course there are some point of excellence and some great show in which they are of course promoting diversity, but it's not right now as usual to see statistically many things. So very often it's, for example, you can see a lot of shows of politics in Italy, because we love politics, we love talking about politics, and but you never see a black faces who is talking about politics. Even as a citizen, as a young person, as a student. The only time that you see maybe some African descent faces when they are talking about immigration or refugee, not immigration. They're talking basically about refugees, because immigration, by the way, is something that involves everywhere, but I don't know why now in Italy it's become a sort of synonymous of African descent, just the word immigrants. But by the way, you will never see someone who has not only a background as migrant, but also a background of studies or a profession. And there are a lot of people, African descent, who are working in the immigration or who have a lot of skills because they have study and whatever. They only invite people that maybe they are refugees and they invite to talk about something that is a part of the phenomenon of the immigration and not necessarily need to be black, because you can be refugee, but you can be from Syria, from so still now often not only African Italians, but also people from other backgrounds, also South Asian Italian and South American Italians are not really included in the media representation. Of course, for the second generation of Eastern European Italians, we have a lot of people that are born by Romanian parents or Albanian parents. It's more easy because they really don't have any particular problem. The problem maybe was for their parents, because their parents were seen as immigrants, and so. But the fact that the ethnicity can hide their background and their roots, their race in particular, shows that not for all the second generation, so not for all the sons of immigrants, there are the same issues of representation.
Are there any other questions from some of our students? Oh.
Yeah, I see Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much. Do you know if there are any studies about those who are more removed from their roots, third generation immigrants, for example, and how they identify? I wonder if there are parallels to other societies in which there have been large population of immigrants. Yeah, I think there is also a third generation, because the interview, maybe also a fourth generation. It depends from which kind of timeline we want to refer. So if the timeline is the generation Balotelli, that we assume is second generation, now there is also a third generation, because some of them, they became parents. So of course, sometimes there are people who are born by people who were born in Italy, but they are not still Italian citizens, because if the parents of second generation, like the young adults that I show you in the clips, that they are 25, 26 year old right now, they have kids and they are still foreigner. Also the kids, even they are born in Italy, are still foreigner. So this is a huge issues. And of course, this can have an impact on I don't know at which level can have an impact. I think that for the third generation, maybe will be definitely more easy to identify in a sort of a new generation that is the new generation of, by the way, of many Italians. So the generation born in 2000, 2006, 2010, I think is a generation that, by the way, even they are white or they have different ethnicity, they feel more diverse and more plural than than the past generation. And so we need to wait, of course, to learn much more, but I think that will bring a real new identity that involves a lot of people. Then I see the question of Dan, can you speak to the impact of xenophobic rhetoric that is exposed by the right-wing politician like Attilio Fontana? Yeah, this is xenophobic rhetoric. Of course, it's a part of course, of the politics of many countries. It's not only a copyright of Italy.
Fred, I don't think everyone can read that question. Could you read it?
Oh yeah, the question of Dan was, can you speak to the impact of xenophobic rhetoric that is exposed by the right-wing politician like Attilio Fontana? I think Attilio Fontana is the president of region Lombardia. I think this rhetoric, of course, it's very common in many countries, so it's not only a copyright of Italy. And in this case, in Italy, has been adopted by the right-wing parties, in particular Lega Nord, North League, and Fratelli d'Italia, but in some cases, sometimes also from the center-right. And what scares me is the total lack, not about the rhetoric of xenophobia, but is the total lack to promote and create institutional tool to celebrate diversity in Italy. This is something that scares for me a lot because, of course, especially young generation needs to have a lot of role models and a lot of models to believe that it works living in a diversity environment. Otherwise, it's like when you say to don't eat this because there are a lot of fat or cholesterol or whatever. You need an alternative also that you need to see. And unfortunately, Italy has a lot of, especially as an institution, lack of willing to promote actively diversity. So everyone, not everyone, some part of the society is very great in talking about diversity, but acting, no. And then I see the question of Pina, do you believe there is a difference in the way that North and South of Italy accept African Italians? Yeah, I think South is more welcome than the North, but unfortunately South has any opportunity to give them, especially to empower economically compared to the North. And so if you want, again, we are talking back to the speech that I was doing, if you want to create a positive role model also through entrepreneurship, through the self-employment, because until the public government and until the corporation don't push to have diversity, you need to exposure by yourself. Like the example that I made, of course, in the entertainment, in the sports, but if we shift this example into the real society, lawyers, teachers, or whatever, they have to do a lot of work. So if you want to aspire to maybe have some small success, for example, as a small entrepreneur, surely a background of the North is the background that can support and help you. So it's a complicated situation. So of course, a lot of families prefer and they move where there was the economy, not where there was the sense of feeling welcome or more. So for this reason, by the way, most of the composition of Afro-Italians are in the North. In particular, I think the 80%, and in particular in the city like Bergamo, Brescia, Vicenza, Verona, Treviso, of course, Milan and Torino, and then Modena and Reggio Emilia. You can find maybe the 70% of Blaq Italians there.
Are there any other questions?
Susan, thank you so much, Susan. And Vanessa Mangiafico, thank you, Vanessa, thank you so much.
I'm curious too. The Black Lives Matter movement was born from such a particular moment in time here in the U.S. And of course, people are watching all over the world, the protests, the calls for justice. How, and I see the same kinds of protests happening in Italy. How is the Black Lives Matter movement taking on a particularly Italian quality? Is it taking on a particularly Italian quality?
Yeah, it's of course this is BLM was a great catalyzer, I think, of activism in Italy. In the sense that, of course, we had in the past a lot of activism. So there were anti-racist association, but I think was the first time that especially a US-based movement about the Black global diaspora became really popular and followed by outside, because it never happened with historical civil rights movement like NAACP or other things. So I think that it's a sort of connection. Maybe it's the sort of attraction like the term Afro-Italian or Black Italian, because we also be too clear that sometimes attractivity of a name can be sometimes used. Because there is also some confusion. I've seen that, for example, they founded not officially because they didn't charter real association, but on Facebook page you can find Black Lives Matter Roma, Black Lives Matter Bologna, or whatever. So they appropriate the use of an hashtag historically, but not the construction of the real movement. So I think it's much more an idea in which abroad United States you can converge on some topic of the struggle that many African descent are doing in abroad United States, so in different countries. But at the same time, we need to recognize also the historical association or historical movement that also in Italy are present, and now they risk to be hid by this new brand new name. Because it's very attractive for many young. Of course, this is not a talk about activism, but I mean, activism is a part of the talk, but I'm not talking about the specifically how movement works. So the risk in Italy is that if everybody talk about BLM on Facebook, if everybody does something on Facebook, nobody will do something actively. And of course, also the media use a lot. The other problem was, for me, this is my personal opinion, but also a lot of Italian media reported about BLM movement in Italy. But they've reported about BLM movement to say that Italians were supported and were against the police brutality or what happened to Americans. Not that in Italy there is a problem of racism. So it was a sort of excuse to. So of course, for me, it's of course positive. It's a great moment without, of course, the explosion and what happened. Also, the tragic event of George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, maybe it was more difficult in 2020 and this year talking again about racism and much more about racism. So this is the first time, especially in the last 8 months, that there were also protests about celebration of specific monuments. There were a lot of controversy about the connection between the past and present, so colonialism and present, and more awareness about that. And I think that, of course, the wave that came from the United States was relevant to create this sense, because it was not only in Italy, it was also in Europe, in United Kingdom again, and also in United Kingdom, I think they have a lot of historical association and movements, but the word BLM was very popular also in UK.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? That you can drop either in the chat or you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask live. How can we watch these 100 interviews? How can we watch this series?
Yeah, I will upload maybe 2 or 3 every month inside the website. The website is www.blaqitalia.info, and the website initially will be in Italian because I made a lot of projects that were about Italy, but the language of the written language was English, because sometimes there were subtitles, or sometimes if I want to tell something, I texted in English. So the idea now is to create awareness between, of course, Italians. So the first lot of work will be made just in Italians, then we will subtitle in English, or also Portuguese, other language from the country in which there are a lot of people of the Black diaspora, because there is much more willingness to know much more about Black in Italy. And the idea is to create an organic knowledge. So explaining that there is not only refugees who came in the last 10 years, but there were a lot of immigrants. And there were not only immigrants, but there were also a lot of people connected also to the colonial past. So there were African descent Italian also at the beginning of the last century, not only in the last 50 or 60 years. And they were not the only one, because since the Roman Empire, there were African Italians. So what we want to celebrate is the fact that we have a continuity, even there is not a huge number like other countries. Maybe in Europe is the first continuity that started from the territory of Italy. The problem is that it's never told, it's not represented, or is misrepresented. So when we go to the Galleria Uffizi and we see that there are 15 or 20 paintings in which are portrayed African descent, and not all those are servant. There were people who were traveling from, for example, the kingdom in Angola. There was a prince who came during the Renaissance just to visit the Duke of Florence. This happened in the Vatican City, where in the 16th century there were Ethiopian pilgrims who went to the Vatican City, and actually the Vatican City erected and built a church called San Stefano degli Abissini to host these pilgrims. So just to show that this was a connection that at least was forced by the proximity of the territory of Italy with Africa. The miles of sea that separate Sicily from North Africa are really few. So you can imagine that this kind of route has been a route since the Roman Empire. So we would like to step by step giving this knowledge to Italians, and also to the people who are familiar and they love Italy. They love a lot of things of Italy. The beautiful of Italy is to have important fields like art, history, politics, fashion, food. But everything of this knowledge came from a multicultural experience. Not made in Italy is not a color, it's something that came since the Roman Empire. So if we will able to restore this concept, I think we will have much more opportunity to show how we were diverse.
I think there is another question from Fran.
Oh yeah, Fran, you mentioned immigrants from many countries in Africa. Are there, or were there immigrants from Ethiopia? Yeah, there are 2 or 3 different immigration from Ethiopia. So people who were here during the colonial empire, there are not a lot, but there were hundreds of mixed race kids who were brought to Italy from 1920 until 1934, when became illegal for a mixed race kids born in Ethiopia by an Italian soldier and an Ethiopian woman to acquire the Italian citizenship. 1934 or 1935 was the year in which technically was prohibited for many Afro-Italians to become citizens. Then we have the second wave of Ethiopians who came during the 70s after the tragic event of the war with Ethiopia between Eritrea, and also Eritreans came during the 70s. So we are talking about 50 years ago. And they basically built 2 communities very strong, one in Rome, the other in Milan. We are talking about around 25,000 Ethiopians. And then there is the third phase of immigration of Ethiopians and Eritreans who started from the end of the 90s, included, of course, refugees or economic migrants. So there are three separate wave of migration. It's interesting because the people who came in the 70s, they have, of course, families and kids. And this is, their kids are the generation born in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And maybe the 40% of this generation moved outside Italy because in Italy didn't have any great opportunity. And so you can find, and this would be also a segment of my platform, you can find a lot of, in this case, Italian Ethiopian, Italian Eritrean who are living in United Kingdom, United States, but they born in Italy or they raised in Italy. But they were able to find some way to move to other countries, and so they definitely moved. Yeah, Susan, does the Blaq Italian movement have significant allies in Italy? In this moment, I think the Blaq Italian movement they have allies inside other association or but this I think is the generation who is trying to organize much more better their efforts and maybe it's the generation will try to become more protagonist. So we had a lot of movements that were founded by non-African or non-African Italian descent and managed by non-African Italian. This is the first time in which we are assisting something different. And so I think that having allies is great, but also having their own strategy movement, it's important. Thank you, Troy. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sue.
From Sue.
Hi, Nick, Talarico.
So if we wanted to follow you on social media to see as you upload these stories, you're on Instagram?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram as a Fred Kuwornu, and I'm writing the new website because it's very brand new. And it's a website in which we launched one or two episodes about African-American history, so about Frederick Douglass, but also there is an interesting story of an important Italian mixed race boxer. His name was Leone Iacovacci, and he won in 1926 the Italian, but also the European championship for the middleweight. And this is an amazing story of an African Italian who was unfortunately pushed and forced to go out from the fascist regime when he won the championship. And this is an amazing story. So I decided because we are not celebrating Black History Month, but by the way, it was a way to, and maybe next week I will upload another episode about Domenico Mondelli. He was a general, Italian Eritrean general, that he lived in Italy. He was brought and adopted by an Italian family, and he joined the military in the First World War, and he raised very, very quickly in many ranks. So he became a lieutenant colonel very, very early, and he joined the fascism, the commission era, but at the same time he was forced to stop. So his career was stopped. Actually, he was maybe the first black pilot aviator in the world also, and maybe the first surely Black Italian, I don't know if European, to join also the Grand Oriente Masonry, but it was never celebrated also after World War II. So after World War II, I think in the 60s, a a president made him general as an honorific title, but he passed away 80s in a small apartment off Rome, Eden, and so that is to say that there are also stories really of excellence, but they were really forgotten, and it's interesting to find a way to tell these stories.
We have another question by Joseph.
You briefly mentioned the lack of African Italians in Italian politics. Is this also expected to improve a new generation or introduce it to the political scene, or then currently, are there currently any policies being made to eradicate discrimination in Italy? No, to eradicate discrimination, of course, we have a lot of policies since I think the end of World War II, especially after what happened and what was made to the Jewish Italian community. So of course there are sort of the fact that these kind of policies are working, maybe no, because I think they need to be enforced by an idea of diversity that you can touch with your hands when you are where you are simply walking on the street of Italy. Because you can tell me about that you want to eradicate discrimination, but if I don't see a police officer with a different background, a bus driver with different ethnicity background, so the figure of the political institution that are represented also by different and diverse officers, I can't really believe it 100% that there is any discrimination. And I can believe that the other are like me, because of course, if I see that the officer are only people of my ethnicity or my religion, I assume that the others, they don't have the skills to do that, or they are not a part of the society. So of course, and about politicians, it's very difficult. So being in politics in Italy is a huge process. What always I say to many young people is you need to join, by the way, every kind of political party, because you need to create and force a competition that the black body is not an object of a specific party or whatever. And only in this way you will create also for the citizenship, the idea that maybe you will not scare that the other that you can't vote their party or whatever, and so if they feel maybe more comfortable, they will open much more to other things. This is for the first step, at least, of and Jamie, the videos of Di Stefano and Ngali included personal anecdotes about being told to go back to their countries and even being denied from biomes. I also read about people denying practice from a Blaq Italian doctor due to ethnicity. How are these instances of discriminators handled, and how are hate crime law enforced in Italy's freedom of speech as open and it's here in the USA? I don't know if actually freedom of speech it's something that in Italy is not like in the United States, but freedom of speech on social media, I think it's like everywhere. So now everyone basically in the world, in many countries of the world, have a lot of freedom of speech and a lot of hate speech, more than in the past. And we have some office like UNAR, that is the office, the National Office on Anti-Discrimination. But I don't think that there is still huge effort to charge crimes. And very often we read, as you mentioned, Jamie, you talk about the doctor, because there was also a racist behavior from a patient to a black doctor, and then the black doctor excuses the patient or whatever. So we don't have a lot of cases that are bring into justice in which, of course, the defendant need then to pay an amount of money about that, and maybe things will change. Sometimes they simply try to find an agreement or a deal outside the justice court, or sometimes the people who receive racist attacks try to pardon the people who was until there is a violence or crime that are much more hard in terms of physical violence. But I think that institutions need to do something more about also hate crime on internet or everywhere, because it's not a problem now, but it's a problem to create a sort of combustible, so a sort of fuel of things that will explode in the next 10 or 15 years if we proceed like that without seeing the effect that the words and behavior slowly and teeny had to many peoples. And to enforce also the idea of many peoples to be superior or racist, because if I see that my law enforcement or my law is not punishing this kind of behavior, at the end I will be supported by thinking that I can do that, or I can. When I was young, we are talking about the early 70s, and I think there were people, racist people in Italy. You have to consider that also we were just maybe 25, 27 years after the end of World War II and the fascism. So there were a lot of people who were joined the fascism, still alive, still in their 40s or 50s, not old. But was very rare to hear the racist word, because there was a sense, maybe the fact that they were coming out from World War II and this terrible period, they didn't want to fuel the animosity of many things, and so it was a different way to behave. Even I think in the mentality, maybe they were. Now it's strange, because it's like they open the cage and everyone is open to say something on Facebook or social media. And sometimes I show the image of Mario Balotelli, the player. Also, when a soccer player is playing, there are a lot of racist words against him. So, in the stadium. Thank you, Joseph. Gary, does use citizenship also on hold until one gets it? No, basically it depends. I mean, if you are a son of Nigerian parents, you don't have any opportunity to hold a EU passport until, of course, you get Italian. But there are a lot of cases of people who have a parents from a European Union country. So I make you an example. If your parents are from Belgium and you are born and raised in Italy, by the way, you have the same difficulties of the other sons of immigrants. You will not become automatically Italian. But the fact that your parents, by the way, have the Belgian citizenship make you possible to travel with the EU Schengen passport inside the European Union without problem. The other kids have much more problem because they can't travel inside the European Union. They need to acquire for a visa, because if my parents are from Nigeria, technically I have only, by the way, the Nigerian passport. And if I want to travel to France or to Belgium, I have to respect the international law that deals the travel of Nigerians to Belgium. So of course, the life is much more easy for someone with sons of immigrants that came from the European Union, but this does not means that automatically they are facilitated to become Italian citizens. This is not work. Grazie Anna Maria. Thank you so much. Grazie Jamie.
Thank you so much, Fred. This is really interesting, and I can't wait to watch as these web episodes are released. And I know that there's a lot of other people are going to feel that way. We're going to use them for class. These are going to be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. for joining us. It's late. So
No.
it's late at night for you.
I have my dinner, and now I will have some pizza or something like that.
Okay.
No, it's that.
Late night delivery. Okay. Well,
Thank you
so much for joining us. And this was a great event. And we hope to see you in the future on campus this time once all of this is over. So
Bye.
take care.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.